July 21, 1947. America opened Life magazine and saw a single photograph that would change motorcycle culture forever. A man slouched on a Harley-Davidson, clutching a beer in each fist, surrounded by dozens of shattered bottles. The caption told readers that 4,000 bikers had invaded a sleepy California town, terrorized its citizens, and turned its streets into a war zone. There was just one problem. Almost none of it happened the way they said it did. That single staged photograph would birth a myth so powerful it split the entire motorcycling world in two and created a label that outlaw motorcycle clubs wear as a badge of honor to this very day: the 1%er diamond. So what really happened during the so-called Hollister Riot? And how did a weekend of beer and burnouts create the most feared identity in biker culture? What I'm about to show you will make you question everything you thought you knew about outlaw bikers. To understand Hollister, you first have to understand what America looked like in the summer of 1947. World War II had ended just 2 years earlier. Hundreds of thousands of young men had come home from Europe and the Pacific, men who had seen combat, who had lived on adrenaline for years, and who now found themselves back in quiet American towns where the most exciting thing happening was a church potluck on Sunday. A lot of these veterans couldn't adjust. The civilian world felt too slow, too quiet, too tame. They craved speed, danger, and brotherhood, the things the military had given them and then taken away. So they turned to motorcycles. Across California especially, motorcycle clubs started forming at a staggering rate. Some were family-friendly riding groups, sanctioned by the American Motorcycling Association, the AMA, the official governing body of organized motorcycling in the United States. These clubs held weekend rallies, toured scenic highways, and followed every rule in the book. But other clubs had zero interest in rules. In 1946, a combat veteran and motorcycle racer named C.B. Wino Willie Faulkner founded the Booze Fighters Motorcycle Club in Los Angeles. The name alone told you everything. These weren't guys polishing chrome on a Saturday morning. They were hard-drinking, hard-riding men who wanted nothing more than to push every limit they could find. And they weren't alone. Other clubs like the Pissed Off Bastards of Bloomington, known as the P-Bobs, the Market Street Commandos, the 13 Rebels, and the Galloping Gooses were all part of a growing subculture of riders who wanted to live loud, live fast, and answer to nobody. Now, every year since the 1930s, the AMA had sanctioned what were called gypsy tours, multi-day motorcycle rallies held in small towns across the country, races, hill climbs, field events, and plenty of socializing. The events brought good money to local businesses and were generally peaceful. In 1947, the host city for the annual Independence Day Gypsy Tour was Hollister, California, a farming community tucked in the San Benito Valley, about 90 miles south of San Francisco. Population, roughly 4,500 people. The town had no idea what was coming. But here's what most people don't realize. What actually came wasn't what history remembers. On the 4th of July weekend, 1947, motorcyclists began pouring into Hollister. The AMA had sanctioned the rally, and the local racing events were organized and legitimate. But word had spread through the non-sanctioned clubs too. Riders from all over California, many of them veterans, many of them wild, decided Hollister sounded like a good time. By Friday afternoon, an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 motorcyclists had arrived in a town built for a fraction of that number. Hollister had a 7-man police force, 7 officers for 4,000 bikers. The math was already a disaster. At first, it was what you'd expect: drinking, lots of drinking. Riders cruised up and down San Benito Street, revving engines, shouting, racing each other in impromptu drag runs right down the main drag. Bars overflowed, the streets got loud. Wino Willie Faulkner and the booze fighters were right in the middle of it. By all accounts, they were the life of the party and the source of a good portion of the chaos. Willie himself later admitted they were just raising hell and having a good time. Beer bottles started piling up in the gutters. A few fistfights broke out. Some riders did burnouts on the sidewalks. But here's the part most people miss. There were no murders, no stabbings, no sexual assaults, no buildings burned. The so-called riot was essentially a massive, rowdy party that overwhelmed a tiny town's infrastructure. That doesn't mean it wasn't alarming. Hollister's residents were terrified. They had never seen anything like it. According to local reports, some families locked their doors and refused to leave their homes all weekend. Shopkeepers boarded up windows. The town felt like it was under siege, not because of organized violence, but because of sheer volume and uncontrolled drunken behavior. By Saturday night, Hollister's police chief had called for backup. The California Highway Patrol dispatched officers. An estimated 40 to 60 arrests were made over the entire weekend, mostly for public intoxication, reckless driving, and disorderly conduct. A few men went to the hospital with minor injuries. One rider was reportedly injured in an impromptu racing accident. And then, by Sunday evening, it was over. The riders packed up and left. Hollister cleaned its streets. The town went quiet again. If that were the whole story, you would never have heard of it. But what happened next changed everything. A San Francisco Chronicle photographer named Barney Peterson had been in Hollister that weekend, and he captured, or more accurately, he created, the image that would define an entire subculture for the next 80 years. The photograph showed a disheveled man sitting on a Harley-Davidson, a beer bottle in each hand, surrounded by a mountain of broken bottles at his feet. He looked drunk. He looked dangerous. He looked like the end of civilized America sitting on two wheels. The photo ran in Life magazine on July 21, 1947, and it was staged. Multiple witnesses and later investigations revealed that Barney Peterson had arranged the bottles around the motorcycle to create a more dramatic image. The scene wasn't organic, it was manufactured for maximum shock value. Some accounts suggest the man on the bike was a local, not even a club rider. Others say it was Eddie Davenport, though this has been debated for decades. It didn't matter. The image was a nuclear bomb. Newspapers across the country ran breathless stories about the invasion of Hollister. The narrative crystallized overnight. Dangerous outlaw bikers were roaming America's highways, terrorizing innocent towns, and nobody was safe. Now here's where it gets even crazier. According to widely repeated motorcycle lore, the American Motorcycle Association responded to the Hollister coverage by issuing a public statement. The alleged quote goes something like this: 99% of motorcyclists are law-abiding citizens. It's the last 1% who are causing the trouble. But here's the thing. There is no verified AMA press release from 1947 containing this exact language. The AMA itself has never been able to produce the original document. Some historians believe the statement was made informally by an AMA spokesperson. Others believe it was paraphrased and repeated so many times that it became gospel. The truth? We may never know if those exact words were spoken. But whether the AMA said them or not is almost irrelevant, because the outlaw clubs heard the message loud and clear, and they loved it. Clubs like the Booze Fighters, the POBOBs, and dozens of others that emerged in the following years embraced the label with open arms. If the establishment said 99% of riders were respectable, law-abiding citizens, fine, they would proudly claim the remaining 1%. The 1% diamond, a small patch shaped like a diamond with 1% embroidered inside, became the most recognizable symbol in outlaw motorcycle culture. Wearing it meant something specific. It meant you lived outside society's rules. It meant you answered to your club and nothing else. It was defiance stitched into leather. And the ripple effects didn't stop there. In 1953, Hollywood released The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando. The movie was directly inspired by the Hollister events and the Frank Rooney short story, Cyclist's Raid, published in Harper's Magazine in 1951. Brando's character, Johnny Strabler, became the archetype of the rebellious biker, leather jacket, sneering attitude, answering the famous question, "What are you rebelling against?" with the immortal line, "What do you got?" The film terrified mainstream America and electrified a generation of young men looking for something to rebel against. Motorcycle club membership surged, and the clubs forming now weren't just riding groups, they were building a code, a structure, a brotherhood that intentionally set itself apart from the rest of society. In 1948, just 1 year after Hollister, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club was founded in Fontana, California. Some of its founding members had ridden with the POBOBs. The DNA of Hollister was in their blood. Within 2 decades, the Hells Angels would become the most famous motorcycle club on earth, and the 1% diamond would become synonymous with a way of life that fascinated and frightened the public in equal measure. The irony of Hollister is almost too perfect. A relatively minor weekend of drunken misbehavior, inflated by a staged photograph and sensational journalism, created the very thing America feared. The media invented the outlaw biker menace, and then young men saw that invention, thought it looked like freedom, and made it real. The 1% identity became self-fulfilling prophecy. A label meant to marginalize a tiny group of troublemakers was transformed into a code of honor, a declaration of independence, and an identity that now spans the entire globe. Today, the 1% diamond is worn by members of clubs on every inhabited continent, from the United States to Europe to Australia to South America. And every single one of those patches traces its philosophical origin back to one chaotic weekend in a farming town that nobody had heard of before, and everyone has heard of since. Hollister, California is quiet now. It holds an annual motorcycle rally that draws thousands of riders each year, a sanitized, permitted, tourist-friendly version of what happened in 1947. There's a certain poetry in that. But the legacy of that weekend isn't found in Hollister's streets. It's found in every clubhouse, on every vest, and in every 1% diamond worn by riders who chose a life outside the lines. Whether you admire that choice or condemn it, one fact is undeniable. The entire mythology of the outlaw biker was built on a staged photograph, a disputed quote, and a weekend that was far less violent than anyone wanted you to believe. The media created a monster, and the monster decided it liked the name. So the next time you see that diamond patch, that small, deliberate declaration stitched onto leather, remember what it really represents. Not a riot, not a war, but a choice, a refusal to be part of someone else's 99%. Now here's my question for you. If you were a vet in 1947 and the media called you part of the dangerous 1%, would you wear the patch or walk away? Drop "wear it" or "walk away" right now in the comments. And if this story kept you watching, hit that subscribe button, because the next video goes even deeper. We're covering the Hells Angels versus Mongols war, And trust me, what sparked that conflict is something you won't believe. I'll see you there.